Hello again. Today we're back in the exit of Vault 111, looking at this frightfully large man's, back. You were looking at his back, right? Good, me too. Anyway, this is girthy Greg, but you could just call him Greg. He's very strong, 9 strength to be exact, because as every extremely strong person knows, you could always be a little bit stronger. Therefore, as you probably already guessed, he's also a complete idiot. His singular brain cell has worked for months on a basic set of goals. Firstly, the Institute is full of very intelligent people and Greg doesn't like that, so we'll have to deal with them. But also, the Commonwealth contains a few particularly strong enemies. Super mutant behemoths covered in boats, Mirelurk queens, legendary deathclaws, you know, that kind of thing. Greg wants to beat some of those things to death, up close and personal. That's right, this is a melee-only run. No guns, no throwables, nothing. Just melee weapons. But assuming you read the title of the video, you already knew that. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, so after having a quick chat with old Codpiece and beating some flies to death with a baton, Greg builds himself a little shack here in Sanctuary Hills, complete with toilet and bathtub, neither of which are plumbed in. Greg doesn't really understand that part. He's wondering when the poop is going to disappear from the toilet, but Greg, it never will. It never will. Like any good hotel, it also has a quality cuck chair to watch the action from, but anyway, the point of all that building was to farm out some XP to invest in our first and possibly most important perk of the playthrough, Idiot Savant, which I thought I had removed the sound for, but down the road at Red Rocket I found this to be incorrect, when that stupid laughing asshole blared into my ears. I'll get around to that later, but first we're going to run around aimlessly for a while. Nothing happened involving Mirelurks, so don't bother investigating the Mirelurk incident. We did, however, poke around some buildings on the outskirts of Concord, killed some ghouls, failed a terminal repeatedly before giving up, cooked up some drugs, and all of that miscellany gave us another level. We'll grab Blacksmith, because modifying our weapons early on will be a pretty instrumental part of Greg's road to success. Therefore, we need something that we can actually upgrade, so it's into Concord itself, where the local bandits are happy to supply Greg with a smorgasbord of weapons to choose from, including one that's actually pre-modded for us, a bladed tire iron. Ooh, very nice. And after a quick chat with the minute men, it's time to use this to beat a deathclaw to death. I hope you'll understand that to make this particular sequence work, Greg is going to briefly slip into some power armor. And after axe murdering his way through the crowds toward the Deathclaw, which he kills first time, absolutely first time. Wait, it actually was first time? Well, I'll be damned. This playthrough might not be so awful after all. Anyway, we got another level from this, so it's time to invest in some pure damage from the Big Leagues perk, because we'll need it. And now that we've got a proper weapon, we're off to this quarry full of Mirelurks for some revenge. Not that we've ever been here before, but if we had, this would be revenge for what they did to Greg. A little more bandit culling later, Big Greg is a mighty level 5, picking up the toughness perk to make up for his almost complete lack of armor, and then after a little more aimless wandering, Greg heads back to Sanctuary to get an easy level up from speaking to Preston, which goes to Armorer this time. Greg makes the place more homely for Sturges and then reinforces all of his raider armor, before it's probably time to head downtown, towards Diamond City and therefore the main quest. On the way, we learn that turrets are an issue whilst clearing out some gunners from an overpass, before siding with a drug dealer to murder his troublesome clients. This lets us shop his wares for some of the chems that we'll use a whole lot of in this playthrough: Buff Out, Medex, and Stimpaks. You see, in the Wasteland, the terms melee specialist and chem addict are pretty much synonymous. This also took us to level 7, which unlocks Big Leagues 2. Very good. Along the way into town is the Corvega assembly plant, which we just happen to have a quest to clear for the minute men. Hacking and slashing his way through about 1 billion bandits, Greg once more confirms his primary weakness: turrets. Especially since they're usually on roofs and other largely inaccessible areas, often the only option is to sprint through to safety and hide from their fields of fire. But anyway, thankfully they don't usually count towards clear out quests, so Greg sprints back out after dealing with the last of the living opponents. And on the way out, sitting on a shelf, we find a lovely baseball bat. A highly upgradable weapon that, if needed, could see us quite deep into the game. But wait, what's this? The Brotherhood of Steel are under threat from a horde of ghouls and need my help at the Cambridge police station? Well, we'd best rush over there immediately. After turning in the Corvega clearance quest and then speaking to Preston again, reaching level 8 in the process. We'll pick up Life Giver, 20 extra max health can't hurt, and then we'll somehow convert this bat to aluminium, yes, aluminium, get over it, and wrap it in chains before heading to the Starlight Drive-In to test it out on some mole rats and build that beacon for Preston. Alright, now let's go and help Mr. Dance at the police station. And you'll be pleased to hear that from this point on, Idiot Savant just plays the little rimshot sound and no longer has the grating, awful laughter. As tempting as it was to run the far more popular Idiot Slut mod. Bethesda modding community, everyone. Anyway, on the way there, an opportunity to test the bat arises. Literally arises from the surrounding wastes. It's ghouls. Very nice. However, I can't help but notice that the considerably faster Tire Iron Axe also one-shots most enemies right now, so, you know, there's that. Alright, we arrive to see Dance's gorgeous, masculine and most definitely human physique locked in mortal combat with those seemingly endless ghouls at the station. When they finally stop coming, we speak to him and he basically lets us join the Brotherhood. For our troubles, we're rewarded with yet another level up, all the way to 9 now, so we'll take another level in Life Giver and head off on a mission with Dance. We're going to ArcJet Systems for something signal booster, something distress signal. Anyway, predictably there's synths here that need a good, hard bonking. I love me a good bonking. This place is also where the junk jet lives, by the way, but we don't get to use that today, as fun as it is. This place, and kind of just the Brotherhood in general, involves quite a bit of hacking, by the way, which at a towering 1 intelligence is quite hard. But eventually they make it through into the control room, Greg activates the backup power, accidentally self-immolates, and then clears the whole facility again because he never saved since arriving here. So he does it all again, not burning himself or anyone else to death this time. He and Dance grab the what's-it thingy from upstairs, and then Greg officially joins the Brotherhood of Steel.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Making it to level 10 by doing so. We'll spend the perk point, rather boringly, on an endurance point, because we need to unlock the later defensive perks. I spend a little while doing random quests and wandering around the Commonwealth, then we'll build a flood lamp and some conduit to squeeze out the last little bit of XP required for the very important level 11. The one that unlocks Idiot Savant level 2. Very nice. Okay, we got a little bit distracted there, but now we're going to Diamond City. Honestly, I find the Piper dialogue at the gates well and truly insufferable, so we'll just pick up with Greg shopping at Arturo's. He's got a Chinese officer sword for sale. I don't mind if I do. We also picked up a couple of pieces of combat armor. Very good. Now, wherever is that slippery synth Nick? The same place he always is, of course, being held by the gangsters in the subway. On the way to him, this raider fell off. And then we'll have a little poke at Swan in his pond. There is, after all, a grognak in the pavilion by his pond. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to come back to him later. So it's into the metro we go, cutting up gangsters with our shiny new sword, getting another level of toughness at level 12 before continuing the cutting all the way into Vault 114, where Nick is being kept. Another few hundred folks later, here he is.
Hello there.
Now together they cut through even more dudes until finally meeting Skinny Malone. Greg doesn't know much about diplomacy, so naturally this ends in conflict, during which Nick asserts his dominance over Malone, throwing him to the floor for Greg to slice up like a giant fat cucumber. Alrighty then, back we go for our interview with Nick, where we find out about Mr. Kellogg, the mercenary, not the anti-masturbation serial fanatic, and head off with Nick again to break into his house. Greg obviously can't pick locks, so we'll have to run to the mayor and beg him for the key. Greg, however, also can't pick human minds, so we'll have to take the key from him stealthily. After which we can poke around Kellogg's house, steal his booze and cigars, leave Nick behind and head out tracking with the dog. For all that hard work, we've hit level 13, and all the detectiving has grown Greg's brain. His tiny, tiny brain. He's now at a mighty 2 intelligence, because we kind of need the medic perk or we'll just never have enough stimpaks. Anyway, Dog helps us through a menagerie of feral irradiated animals and ghouls on our way to Kellogg's hidey hole up in Fort Hagen, the roof of which is covered in turrets, of course. Navigating this is a little bit awkward, but we get through it eventually. And into the synth-filled fort, where Greg slashes and cuts and slashes and yeah, that's kind of all he does now. But before fighting the big man himself, we'll have a quick nap. As usual, we have a chat.
God damn it, you mercenary motherfucker.
Which ends in a fight, a short fight, and a short fight that Greg wins. So gracious in victory. Once Greg's finished dipping his balls in Kellogg's aerated brain pan, he grabs his cybernetics and leaves, gazing upon the beautiful sight of the Pridwen as it arrives in the Commonwealth. Now then, back to Nick to tell him what we got, and once more level up, to 14 now. We'll take the medic perk that we've unlocked with our newfound intellect, making our stimpaks slightly more efficient. And now we could delve into Kellogg's mind, but instead, we'll go back to our brotherly duties, picking up some busy work quests that involve clearing a subway station of a great many ghouls, some of which are legendary, which is nice, but nothing really great drops. Aside from this penetrating lead pipe, which isn't good as a weapon, but it does come with some interesting mental imagery. So with that quest done, let's go find some old tech for Scribe Halen. It's up here somewhere. Off the map? On the way there, Greg makes an open plan bedroom at 10 Pines Bluff, deals with some raiders and then has a rather long fight with a legendary Mirelurk that eventually results in a not particularly useful leather right leg. And when I finally arrive at the map edge where this marker is, I find a boat, and realise that this random Brotherhood quest item must have generated in the Far Harbour DLC area. This wasn't the plan, but I guess we're going to do some Far Harbouring. The quest that gets you over there is about chasing down these folks' lost daughter, Kasumi, who through her holotapes you learn believes that she's a synth has run off to a place on the island where synths go and live happily ever after or something. So off we go as well. Upon arrival, we get a load of XP and level up. Nice. So we're going to be starting the day off right with another level in Big Leagues 3 before meeting the rather ornery folk of Far Harbour. I've actually never done any of Fallout 4's DLC quests, so I have no idea what to expect here. But what I find is a load of slimy amphibian things attacking the gates, and they kill me rather disturbingly quickly. So we're just going to watch the action from up here this time, as the townfolk yeet molotovs and bullets at the slimy horde. Of course, Greg still dives in for the final glory kill at the end, which it turns out isn't the end, so now he's stuck down there when Wave 2 arrives. Eventually though, they stop coming and we're thanked for our help. This place is pretty front-loaded with lore, but we can skip over all of that and head to old Longfellow.
Let's go, Longfellow.
Follow me.
Who eventually agrees to guide us to Acadia, the synth refuge that young Kasumi has run off to. It's a fairly long journey that leads through a load of weirdo nasty islanders, fog ghouls, wolves, and of course, Mirelurks. We run into an atom weirdo on the road, which is supposed to exposit to us the conflict between the various factions of the island.
Go ahead and shoot her then.
She ain't worth wasting ammo on.
We leave them behind and up the road part ways with Longfellow, and get an idiot savant proc on the quest completion. I've been waiting for that to finally happen. It took us to level 17, and we'll use the 2 perk points on Blacksmith level 2 and another endurance point. Inside Acadia we meet a synth named Dima, who asks us what our earliest memory is to try and help us figure out whether or not we're a synth. The problem with this is that it's a video game, so my character's earliest memory is when I made him. Oh, hang on a minute, I'm getting kind of existential over here. Is Greg a synth? I mean, I made him. Anyway, Greg, who I think is a human, speaks to a few of the resident synths and then makes use of their weapon bench to upgrade one of these pole hooks that they have here. Very on-brand, but honestly using slow melee weapons kind of just feels awful most of the time, so I doubt it will see much use. Speaking of slow weapons though, one of the traders here will sell us a super sledge. And yes, it's a slow melee weapon and I just said they feel awful, but it's a super sledge, come on. I'm gonna use it, especially since, even though I don't have a science perk, I can add energy damage to it. Neat. We're here for Kasumi though, right? She's downstairs and she's not just going to come home with us. But since we're here as a detective, she asks us to do some detecting. Something's up. The upper echelon of the synths are doing something weird, and apparently it's our job to figure out what. Starting with breaking into a particular cupboard from which I'd be able to eavesdrop on a meeting. Luckily, breaking in doesn't actually involve either lockpicking or hacking. Instead, we just have to get the key from this guy, Cog. And I assumed this would mean pickpocketing, but no, he lost the key, so we just have to go and find it. It's up here on the main level, just left on a table. So, okay, we use it to get into this cupboard and listen in on a meeting, in which Dima and his head honchos discuss the urgent recovery of Dima's memory banks, which may or may not hold dirty secrets. They're locked away in a submarine base now called home by the children of Atom, and they need recovering apparently, so we learn that a program to access them has been developed and immediately steal it before returning to Kasumi.
I'll get Dima's memories, and then we'll figure things out from there.
Good luck.
So, off Greg goes into the foggy wastes, bonking some stunted radioactive bears along the way with our shiny new hammer. Also, this thing, I have no idea what it is, or was. It's dead now. And a few stims later, so is its angler friend. When we eventually reach the base, the rather more militaristic than usual children of Atom aren't just going to let me straight in. I have to perform some kind of initiation ritual first, which involves heading over to this spring and chugging some extremely poisonous water. Num num num. Drink up, Greg. We see a ghostly figure and naturally follow it into the wilderness, seeing all kinds of colourful radioactive ghost wildlife whilst being cooked from the inside out by radioactive spring water. Thankfully, Greg keeps enough of his mental faculties to use anti-radiation drugs whilst having his religious visions, so we make it to the shrine alive and clear it of a great many ghouls. As usual, one of them drops a completely useless legendary weapon, and then we head inside the radioactive shrine, gleaning a password from some scrawled text on a locker and using it to get our grubby little infidel mitts on this carved icon. Bringing that back to the Atom folks and explaining our vision proves that we're chosen, and very trustworthy indeed, so they give us some robes and let us in. Also, Idiot Savant procced on this quest reward too, giving us almost 3 levels. Up to 19 now. We'll take levels in the Armourer and Medic perks before heading into the sub-base in search of Dima's memories, which are kind of just hidden behind a straight-up Mission Impossible trap hallway. Thankfully, Greg doesn't have to perform any contortionist stunts to dodge the lasers, he can just disarm them one by one, which is kind of lame when you think about it. But anyway, there are more automated defenses through here too, like turrets and robots, demolishing which pushes Greg to level 20, where we'll take Life Giver 3, which allegedly lets you slowly regen missing health. Very slowly, I assume, because I've never noticed it. Some more robo-bashing later, in the room with Dima's terminals, we find a legendary Assaultron, which is fairly alarming. We're going to need to become addicted to some chems in order to make it through this one. But make it through we do, and then it explodes on us, but it's fine. Med-X is rad. Annoyingly, buff out addiction lowers your endurance, meaning we're over-cucumbered and we'll have to drop some stuff before heading into Dima's old cast-off memories. We're transported to a seriously unholy crossbreed of Minecraft and the Talos Principle, played through the medium of Fallout 4's settlement building. It's dreadful, truly awful. You just have to point lasers at laser holes in order to clear and build a path for these little techno-lice to retrieve data with. I was in this program for about 45 minutes. There are 5 levels, and none of them are an actual challenge from a puzzle perspective. It's more of a mental endurance test. Can you withstand the frustrating, imprecise building mechanics for long enough to make it through? Well, it turns out I can. As you progress through each level of Wish.com Talos Principle one by one, you learn a different morally questionable thing that Dima has done to maintain the island's status quo. To put it basically, he's created contingency plans to either control or wipe out everyone else on the island if the need arises, by either replacing leaders with synths or just straight up having nukes ready to go on standby. Something like that anyway, you get the idea. Also, perhaps most importantly, we learn of a shipment of quite special marine combat armor scattered around the coast of the island in sunken cargo ships. So, okay then, out we go, fast travelling to a random spot and running towards the quest marker for the first armour shipment, which, it turns out, is really rather out there. Out in the cargo hold of this boat, we find a pair of legs. Big, chunky legs, which grant considerably more armour than our current stuff. I kind of thought I'd been scammed by Dima by only getting legs, but then I realised that there are 2 other shipments. So, more swimming. After getting this buff-out addiction cleared actually, because it's really annoying. The second armour shipment contained the body and helmet, leaving just the arms. Before we grab those, we're not too far off from one of Dima's dirty secrets. The code that could essentially kill the people of Far Harbour. Unfortunately, it's guarded by rather a lot of horrifically strong anglers, and even though they won't actually come out here to the little spit of land that the secret is buried on, Greg is too scared to dig it up while they're watching. So he has to go and kind of just squat in the sea for a while before he can start digging. Alright, now then, the last armor shipment. On the way there, Greg levels up by stoving in a raider's head, and we'll take yet another endurance point because I'd like to unlock the ghoulish perk, and having more endurance just doesn't hurt anyway. With the last bit of armor acquired, I do realise that unfortunately I'll probably never replace the kind of crappy legendary left arm I have, because it gives +1 strength and endurance, both of which feel far more valuable than a little bit of extra armor. Whatever. Next, nuclear launch key, which is hidden in this hotel, which is, of course, infested with super mutants. Greg rushes through, bashing as he goes, until he eventually makes it into this safe room, where he doesn't find the nuclear key, but instead finds a tape detailing where they're hidden, I assume, because a quest marker has appeared telling me that that's what I've found. Before we leave the hotel though, look at the funny toilet gnome. Haha, very funny. Back out in the wonderfully atmospheric but unfortunately angler-infested wastes, we do indeed find that key in the hold of another sunken boat. So now, after very slowly beating this venomous angler to death, we can hunt down Dima's final dirty secret, hidden in the Vimpop factory, which is also infected with super mutants that needed a good bonking.
Bonking time! I loves a bit of bonking! 3, 4, 5, 6, 7...
In his post-bonk clarity, Greg is faced with a terminal, which, as we've established, he's not particularly good at. Eventually though, he's in and can head down into a sub-level which contains... a skeleton? And some tapes which explain that this skeleton is in fact Captain Avery from Far Harbour, who was replaced by Dima with a synth. Interestingly, there's also a terminal down here that's keyed to allow prototype synths into an extra room, presumably hiding some interesting loot. We could bring Nick here to gain access, but I'll be honest, I probably won't bother. Anyway, this concludes Greg's detective arc. He heads back and spills all the various flavours of bean to Kasumi, before deciding what to actually do with all of these fun secrets. You can let any of the various factions know that they're being subtly controlled or whatever, but I chose to just confront Dima about it, since we're already here. He lets us know that he was having us followed the whole time anyway, which was rude, and then he asks us if we'd like to join in on some more human replacement. Since it's worked so well having a synth on the inside at Far Harbour, why not replace the High Confessor of the local Atom sect, Tectus?
Okay, I'll do it.
Greg is on board, because Greg is usually just on board with the first thing that anyone suggests. There's not much complex decision making going on up there. In order to make this human switcheroo, he sends us to get some recordings of the previous High Confessor so that he can stitch together some fake evidence that he's something, threat to Tectus's rule, something, gain his trust, something, murder him in the control room. In the process of grabbing those tapes, we hit level 22 and take Pack Mule because I'm sick of all these cucumbers slowing me down, and then with the fake tape thrown together we take it to Tectus, who's very concerned and agrees to meet us in the considerably more private control room of the sub-base. I suppose fairly unsurprisingly though, Tectus sniffed out our treachery and brought a pair of bodyguards with him to kill us. Unfortunately for him, their skulls are just as vulnerable to sledgehammers as everyone else's. Then it's just the Confessor himself, who gets to die by the sword instead. We hide the bodies and head back to Dima, who's apparently finished manufacturing a new Tectus already and given him memories of an atomic vision imploring him to make peace with Acadia and Far Harbour. Thus concludes the Acadia questline. Finally. We head back to the sub-base one last time to get a reward from Robotectus in the form of some armor which gains damage and energy resistance the more irradiated you are. Now, the whole reason we were here was to grab a thing for the Brotherhood and bring Kasumi home in the process, and thankfully this whole ordeal has taught her that making her not parents happy is important, so she'll go back. And so will we. Somehow, after about 6 hours on this foggy-ass island, I miss the Commonwealth and its delightful shades of brown and, well, it's kind of just all brown actually, but still, I miss it. Greg is rewarded for bringing Kasumi back and then immediately heads to Sanctuary to dump all the cucumbers he's been lugging around. We've also leveled up to 23, so we'll grab Ghoulish, which makes you regenerate lost health based on your radiation levels. I'm not really sure how good this actually is, but I like it thematically, so you know, we're taking it. Right, back to Scribe Halen, who's the reason we went to that damn island in the first place. But upon arriving at the police station, something zips overhead and crashes in the distance. Greg investigates, following the green blood trail into a cave and slaughtering a wounded alien for its tiny but valuable blaster. Where were we? Oh yeah, the Brotherhood. We turn in our quests before heading off with Dance for a vertibird ride to the Pridwen. Once aboard, we wait patiently for Elder Maxon to finish his speech before he gives us the rank of Knight, which comes with a set of power armor that we'll never wear. Our first quest as Knight is to introduce ourselves to the various members of the crew. Social anxiety, truly the greatest foe in the wasteland. Doing so levels us up once again to 24. We'll grab the Adamantium Skeleton perk, which lessens the limb damage we take. Very good. I informed the Lancer captain here of Acadia, the synth colony, thinking maybe I'd just be rewarded for the intel, but that just started a quest that I doubt I'll ever do. A quest we will do, however, is to go and clear out the nearby Fort Strong of super mutants. You're supposed to ride on a vertibird from this quest, using its door gun to clear the mutants on the island. But that's not really how Greg operates, so we'll be going in on foot instead. Unfortunately, it is rather designed to be completed from the air, hence the super mutant behemoth, but I'm sure we'll manage just fine anyway. First, clearing all the little guys one by one before focusing on Mr. Big Man, who it turns out is, well, he's quite strong. The fight wasn't going well, until I kind of accidentally discovered the rather broken effect of a Yao Gai roast. I ate it just for the healing, and then proceeded to finish off the behemoth from about 75% health. Those roasts say that they add 10 melee damage, but it turns out they actually, for some reason, grant a 500% increase. Alright, I guess, that's quite handy. Greg and Dance clear the remaining mutants inside and bond over a shared xenophobia.
You must hate these mutants as much as I do.
Absolutely. Wiping them out was a pleasure.
I wish all of mankind shared your sentiment.
Before securing the nuclear armory within for the Brotherhood. I think the Brotherhood might actually be the bad guys, you know, but whatever, don't think about it too much, just go and get another quest from Maxon. Before we jump into that though, you might remember when I started we had 9 strength rather than maxing it out at 10. That's because we can get a bobblehead from the mass fusion building downtown to get a free point. I think we could have also gotten another from a special book or something, but I forgot about that, so feel free to leave a comment telling me about it. Who am I kidding? You already did that 10 minutes ago. So hey, whilst I'm living in your head rent-free, go ahead and subscribe to the channel to let me know that I should make more content like this. Yeah, anyway, whilst I was saying all of that, Greg was cutting his way through the gunners that live in the mass fusion building, kind of wondering why literally everyone was dying in one hit, still unaware of how broken that bear roast was, and all of the killing took him to level 25. With which we'll grab Ghoulish level 2. Again, no idea how useful this is, but I like the concept, so here we are. And finally we grab the Strength bobblehead, which sits just up here. I want to go grab the Endurance one next, and whilst running to its location we pass Good Neighbor, and figure we might as well finally make use of Kellogg's brain chip and progress the main storyline just a little bit. I see this electrified Chinese officer sword in a shop here and notice that its damage is 309? Wait a minute, all of my weapons have insane damage. That pole hook hits for a whopping 871. So yeah, if you ever need a hand on a melee run, Yao Gai roasts, they go pretty hard. Far harder than they're supposed to, I expect. You already know what this memory sequence is about, so we don't need to talk about it too much. We learn that Kellogg delivered Sean to the Institute, that they used teleportation to get in and out, and that a scientist made it out and is hiding in the glowing sea. Greg leaves the memory lounger with his long-distance vision thankfully intact this time, and then gets back to work finding the Endurance bobblehead, which is a ways south of here. On the way past we see Swan again, the behemoth that lives in a pond. And well, yeah, we just unceremoniously murder him in about 3 hits. But don't worry, I'm not just going to stock up on bear meat and exploit this bug to obliterate everything in 1 hit for the rest of the video. That would kind of feel like a waste of all of Greg's hard work and training so far. Anyway, Swan drops us his power fist, but unfortunately Big Greg is spec'd into the other kind of melee weapon, so this doesn't benefit from his big leagues perks. Oh well. Onwards to Poseidon Energy, where after a load of Mirelurks, automated defenses and then finally raiders, including this guy, Cutty in his suit of power armor who took some pretty serious killing, we get our bobblehead, taking us to 10 endurance. Alright, from here we might as well go and meet Virgil, the escaped scientist, and progress the main storyline to the point that it intersects with the Brotherhood questline. We've got to run all the way there from Diamond City, And on the way out, Greg buys an electrified serrated sword from a caravan trader to replace his boring, simply serrated one. The run out there is long and involves cutting through quite a few enemy camps, which levels us to 26, where I guess we'll start taking bloody mess perk points just for the blanket damage buff that they give. 3 Deathclaws later, 1 glowing, 1 legendary, and 1 just normal, we're in Virgil's little hidey hole. He tells us about the Corsa signal thing and that we can track one down and steal their brain chip to reverse engineer their teleportation magic. So off Greg goes to chase a Corsa through the gunner-inhabited green tech genetics. Unfortunately, he's no longer buffed by the magical bear meat, so some enemies actually take more than 1 hit. How dreadful. Thankfully then, this legendary gunner, whose head is currently floating gracefully through frame, donates to our cause an instigating Chinese officer sword, which deals double damage to full health enemies. It'll need upgrading, but once it is, I expect it to one-shot most trash enemies at least. After getting blown up by a man with a rocket launcher, Greg claws his way up to the higher levels of the tower, where sure enough he finds that Corsa, and then kills that Corsa. I've gotta say, steadily cutting up invisible enemies isn't particularly engaging gameplay, but eventually Greg gets it done and rummages around in Z247's brain for his Corsa chip, before leveling up from the quest completion and taking Big Leagues 4. A nice boost in damage and also area damage, letting Greg's swings hit multiple enemies. There's a synth captive here, so Greg dutifully performs an execution for the Brotherhood before heading off to get this chip decoded. By the Railroad, confusingly, given our diametrically opposed ideology. But they've got a Tinker Tom, and he's what we need. So we head to the end of the Freedom Trail, enter the password, and meet the gang, who escort me to Tom's desk. He does his thing, and then we're off back to Virgil, just like that. We take all that we've learned to Daddy Maxon, who instructs us to build our fancy teleporter at the nearby airport. So we'll do that now. Just as I assume is completely normal, we've already got the various apparently specialised bits of junk that we need to build the platform and all of its auxiliary bits and bobs stashed away at the workshop in Sanctuary. So before you know it, we're powered up and ready to get zapped into the Institute. We scare a child and then kill our father-son, realise that doing that sort of bricks the quest, reload and do the things that the Brotherhood sent me here to do, which involves scanning their networks and speaking to a scientist called Madison Lee, who left the Brotherhood years ago. They want her back because of her specialist knowledge in the field of resurrecting gigantic mechanized capitalists. She's reluctant but agrees to come back if I help her learn what happened to Virgil. And no, she doesn't just believe me when I tell her I've met him. So we have to head into the closed-off area of bioscience down here in the Institute where Virgil worked, accessible via a few terminals which Greg found very difficult, and then further guarded by some robots. Eventually we get a holotape recorded by Virgil and take it to Lee, and learning the truth is enough for her to part ways with the Institute and join the Brotherhood.
I'll make my way back to the Brotherhood.
How exactly she gets out, I don't know, but she does. And so do we after having a mandatory chat with the leaders of each division down here. Back on the surface we have to go back and forth between Proctor Ingram on the ground and Elder Maxon in the sky a few times before we're told by the 2 science ladies to go fetch a massive magnet from a hospital. Greg doesn't ask questions and people like him for that. He just goes where he's told, kills whatever is there and gets the thing. This hospital is overrun with super mutants, as Greg discovers in the most comedic manner possible. There's a legendary enforcer here that takes quite a bit of killing. But once it's eventually dealt with, it drops Ron Jeremy. Don't Google that. Anyway, we break into the operating theatre and grab the magnet before heading back to Ingram and building these 4 actuators. I'm not sure why we had to actually construct them out here, but okay. Next, we need to go and secure a large supply of a very specific model of nuclear bomb for Mr. Prime to throw at things. Oh yeah, we're building Liberty Prime by the way, I don't think I mentioned that. So back to the comforting yellow hues of the glowing sea and its population of Deathclaws, by slaughtering which Greg hits level 29, at which level we'll get Blacksmith level 3, though I'm not sure how many upgrades are unlocked by Blacksmith 3 that don't also require the science perk. We'll see. The nuke storage is this cool concrete pyramid, and it's surprisingly uninhabited aside from a few ghouls, until suddenly we run into this atom dude and his pet Assaultron. Thankfully our work at Far Harbour lets us easily persuade pretty much all of the atom cultists we run into, since we can just tell them that we're a child of Atom and most of the time they'll let us do whatever we want. We can just grab them by the atom. Ugh, whatever. We use the terminal to access the nukes, plant the beacon the science girls gave us, and get out of here after dealing with the elevator guardian. Very funny, Todd. Very funny. With that, we can start the big man up.
Liberty Prime, back online.
Wowee. Very capitalist. Much patriot.
Primary targets. Any and all red Chinese invaders.
Speaking of patriots, Dance, it turns out, is not a patriot. He's a robot.
Dance is a synth. He represents everything we hate. A monstrosity of technology.
So Elder Maxson sends us to kill him. Halen intercepts us on the way out and tries to convince us to hear him out and tells us where he'll be hiding. But come on, we're a red-blooded American synth killer. And besides, he's asking for it.
I'm a synth, which means I need to be destroyed.
No, I mean it. He actually wants us to execute him. So we do. Alright, back to the Pridwen to be made a paladin for killing our best friend.
I won't disappoint you, Elder.
And as our first assignment as Paladin Greg, we're sent by Paladin Greg. I'm sorry to anyone called Greg, it's just a funny name. And as our first assignment as Paladin Greg, we're sent by Lancer Captain Kells to deal with the railroad. They tell me I'll need to hack a terminal there, so to bring someone who can hack it if I can't do it myself. Naturally then, I bring along Nick Valentine, the synth. There's nothing narratively dissonant about that at all. Nope. So we head to that old church that they live under and slice through a great many railroad agents, including but not limited to Desdemona, Drummer Boy, Glory, and good old Tinker Tom. All that killing brings us to the ripe old level of 30, so I guess we'll finally take Rooted, even though I don't tend to stand still very often, I just don't really see any better options. It turns out that we didn't actually need to bring someone capable of hacking to reprogram Pam for the Brotherhood, by the way, so we just brought Nick along for the fun of it, I guess. And that just leaves Deacon. In another life I love you like a son, Deacon, but today I will hunt you down. Don't try and swim away now, just accept your fate. With the railroad dealt with, the end is very much in sight. Back on the Pridwen, Ingram sends us on another fetch quest to get some special fuel cell to jumpstart Mr. Prime with, and funnily enough it's at Mass Fusion, where we got that strength bobblehead earlier. We travel there via Vertibird, and we're supposed to clear the LZ of synths with the minigun, but, well, Greg just can't pull the trigger. So eventually the pilot tells us to jump out since he can't land. What follows is Greg's first double kill, slicing straight through 2 synths in one attack. Masterful work, Greg. Inside of Mass Fusion's upper floor, we have to break into a specific terminal, which would be difficult if people didn't just leave their passwords lying around either on paper or holotape just strewn throughout the Commonwealth. Oh, and Ingram tagged along on this mission too, by the way. Here she is, missing the elevator down to the special tech level. In which elevator, Greg is a caged animal waved in front of synths with laser rifles to be used as target practice. Another roughly 18 billion synths later, we go down to the basement where the fun stuff is kept, and eat heroic doses of Rad-X and Radaway to retrieve the fuel cell. Yet another load of angry robots later, we can finally go back and free the big robot man himself. Wakey wakey, Liberty Boy. Hey, are you... Oh, Jesus, be careful. Right, anyway, off we go then. I'd like to say that Greg was very helpful along Liberty Prime's journey to the Institute, but actually, on account of the number of thrown nuclear devices in play, he kind of just has to hang back and deal with any stragglers. But Greg follows him through streets and across open waters, leveling up to level 31 in the process and taking Bloody Mess 3. He honours the Fallen in his own special way, and absolutely helps out with this behemoth. And then finally arrives at their destination, the Institute, where, once again, for about the 5th time, Liberty nukes Greg. So, alright, fine, we'll just stand back and observe as he bends physics to clear out the defending synths. Liberty makes a hole and Greg just jumps right in. Too early, apparently. So, we'll just fly our way back out here. No one saw that. And then we'll jump back in now that the zone transition has materialized in the hole. Idiot Savant procced for the completion of Ad Victorium, giving us 2,500 XP and leveling us to 32, which we'll spend on another point of Rooted. And now we'll clear out the Institute and everything that lives within it. First, we've got to go and visit our son Dad to override the facility lockdown from his terminal. He has something to say, but didn't quite get it out in time. And now with the lockdown lifted, we can access the main reactor, plant a bomb on it, and then be teleported to safety. Little Robo Sean asks to come with us, but he's, as Greg so eloquently puts it, not Sean.
You're not going anywhere with me.
So off we go to watch a lovely explosion from a safe distance. Very nice. The ending cinematic is playing, and come on, Greg, say the line. Say it, Greg!
Because I know war. War never changes.
In an absolutely beautiful moment, Idiot Savant procs on the final quest completion, giving a tidy 7,950 experience, which translates to 4 levels, taking Greg up to 36. We'll grab another level in Armourer, 2 in Toughness, and the last in Chem Resistant, since we take quite a lot of those. So, Greg is bestowed the rank of Sentinel, and now, well, now what? Well, I believe we need a rather special weapon to finish things off with. Legends tell of just such a weapon, hidden out in the fog. So one last time, we're headed back to Far Harbour, travelling to Echo Lake Lumber, putting down some ghouls and grabbing this, the Harvester, a Ripper with chance to stagger. This is insanely overpowered. As I mentioned earlier, I didn't think I'd make use of it, but we do in fact use Blacksmith 3 to give it the extended blade mod, increasing its damage to 45. Now, just gotta test it on something. Just to the south of Walden Pond is an interesting monument called Carhenge, and its guardian is a super mutant behemoth. Ordinarily quite the challenge, but with a staggering Ripper, well, it was actually too easy. Okay, how about a very, very large Mirelurk, since the smaller ones gave us so much trouble earlier. Here in the Massachusetts State House, we ought to find what we're looking for. And after chewing through a whole load of smaller Mirelurks, there she is. Yes, Queen! Slay! As in, we slay her. Easily. First try. Honest. When she breaks out of the stagger loop, things momentarily get dangerous, but yeah, this weapon is actually game-breakingly strong. I'd say we'd deal with Swan next, but, well, he's already dead. If he weren't though, this is what the fight would look like. Thanks for demonstrating, Greg. So I guess he can just rest now. He's done. Greg takes off his armor and for the first time in a very long time, just sits down. I had fun with this playthrough and I hope you had fun watching it. If you did, like the video. But whatever you do, remain indoors. There's an extremely unintelligent xenophobe out there with a staggering Ripper. Until next time, thanks for watching, and goodbye.